with Naturally Mendocino. We're broadcasting live tonight, August 31st, from the studios of MendocinoTV.com. We're going to be talking about the election coming up in the fall. And one of the issues that's on the election for everybody in Mendocino County to vote on is whether we should increase the sales tax for 5 years, a half a cent, to raise approximately $20 million so that we can build a facility to help people that have mental health problems, need drug treatment, and there's no facility in Mendocino at this point. And tonight I have helping me host this show somebody with a lot of experience, Marianne McGee, who has worked, I got a little resume, let me read it here, master's degree in applied behavioral science, 25 years in both public and private social service management, 10 years as the resource development director at the Mendocino Coast Clinics. She's put in her time. I have also with me Sonia Nesh, who's a local expert on mental health needs in this community, and Sheriff Tom Allman, who has spearheaded an initiative by the people of Mendocino County to put this on the ballot. I want to thank you both for being here at dinner time, and Marianne for helping to host this program, because usually I bring a lot of attitude. She brings some real background and research to the whole thing. I'm just going to bring a real brief summary just to bring everybody up to speed and let our audience know that in about 15 minutes we'll be glad to accept your calls. It's 964-0101. If you're watching this live, which I think there's a few people watching it right now, you can make comments on the live stream video next to the video, and I'll be able to see those and relay the questions to our audience. Okay, currently, Mendocino County does not have facilities for inpatient treatment in psychiatric substance abuse disorders. People who need these services either don't get them or wind up in jail or must be sent to hospitals several hours away, an ineffective system that is enormously costly to Mendocino County. In an effort to revive mental health services, over 4,000 citizens, led by Sheriff Allman, petitioned to put an initiative, Measure AG, on the ballot this November 8th. This will temporarily raise the sales tax a half a cent for 5 years for new facilities that will provide crisis, residential, and psychiatric inpatient treatment in Mendocino County, alcohol and drug treatment in Mendocino County, and training in Mendocino County for first responders and mental health professionals. This will also create a fund for the money raised and a commission of citizens and public officials to oversee its use. Marianne, let me turn it over to you.
I'd like for each of you to talk a little bit about why you're involved and exactly a little bit more detail about what this measure does and why it came about. Sonia, you want to start?
Okay, so I'm involved in this because my daughter was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder at the age of 15. She's 52 today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Today?
And today.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so the she needs services, and it's pretty clear to me, being on the front line all of these years, what she needs and what everybody else needs too. And so I became very active in NAMI in 1986.
What NAMI is?
National Alliance on Mental Illness. And because she was in a hospital for a year in Fresno, a Mennonite hospital that was absolutely excellent. And once a month they would call all the families together. And I remember that the first time I was there, I just was speechless. I couldn't say anything because I was in a room with probably 50 parents of kids, and I had nobody to talk to. I knew nothing about mental illness, and it was a big awakening for me, and that's why I started NAMI, Mendocino County. I was one of the founders in 1992, and I've been facilitating family support group here in Fort Bragg since 1992. And I'll do it.
So you want to just add to that a little bit about your experience with the current mental health systems and why you're so supportive of this?
Well, for the last 15 years, we have not had adequate mental health services. We have not had the crisis care people need. We've had 9 or 10 mental health directors, and no one to really talk to make it right until now, basically. And with this initiative, we have a chance now to make it right, to provide early intervention crisis care. Most I would say relapses can be stopped if you get it on day one. I mean, when a person goes without sleep for one night or 2 nights, that's the beginning of a relapse, and it goes fast from there. And they're either going to end up, in jail, or they're going to end up in the emergency room. And so this is a way we plan to help people in the early stage of crisis, which we have not had in this county.
Or they end up on the street.
That's right.
It's the other
That's
option.
where you come in.
That's right.
Right. Well, thank you both. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing us to be here. And for people who are watching this, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen about mental health and hopefully call in. I'm in uniform, so I'm not going to get political on this, but I'm going to talk about the mental health situation we have. And in 1999, a decision was made by the then Board of Supervisors, and none of those supervisors are currently sitting on as a board member, to close our psychiatric health facility, PHF. And if you hear people talk about the PUF unit, they're talking about the psychiatric health facility. So the decision was made in 1999. It actually closed its doors in 2000, and it was closed for several reasons. It was closed for the inability of the county to locate trained employees. Some people said it was closed because of the finances. That's probably the biggest thing I disagree with. And also at that time, there was a critical time where there had been at least a couple inmates from our county jail transferred to the psychiatric health facility, which ultimately committed suicide. So there was certainly an emotional driven decision made to close the psychiatric health facility. And what that facility is, in California, people have heard the phrase 5150. And 5150 of the Welfare and Institution Code defines someone who is either unable to care for their own safety, a danger to others, or gravely disabled. And when somebody has been 5150, the state law allows that person for the government to take that person for a 72-hour detention to allow them to either decompress, to get some medicines, get away from whatever is driving them to the psychotic episode. But that facility is supposed to be local, where people can be taken, and that's where the services can be delivered. But in Mendocino County, so since 2000, we haven't had that facility here. So currently, those people are taken, and everyone since 2000, every person who has been 5150, if I can talk about it, as a verb, if they've been 5150, they are taken to emergency rooms. And as we know, our 3 hospitals, the emergency room space is critical, and we are now law enforcement is a first responder to deal with these people who are experiencing a psychotic episode. And then after law enforcement gets them to the emergency room, mental health responds, and if a bed is located somewhere in the state, usually in Yuba County or Solano County, sometimes Sonoma County, then a person is put into a backseat of a car and they're transported. And so what we're doing is, and sometimes they're kept in the emergency rooms 24, 48, and 72 hours in emergency room. So the person is laying on a gurney, they have to be escorted to the restroom, they're fed there, they see all this excitement that emergency room presents. And I'm here to say that I don't believe that that's the best location for someone to try to relieve their stress. And so law enforcement has found its way into the accepted form by just a de facto response agency. Law enforcement is the agency that responds to these psychotic episodes. So if you picture a 16-year-old girl whose boyfriend just broke up with her, and she's thinking about committing suicide, and her parents call 911, they're getting it.
For help.
They're looking for help, and I'm not saying we don't deliver the help, but government sends usually a male with a gun and a badge into the house to say, we're here to help. And we've taken about 6 steps backwards before we get to the point of delivering proper services. And
Yeah, from what you say, if I was a parent in that position, I would have to say, and I'm informed like I am now, I wouldn't call the police. It's like you've made it sound, and it's probably real, that being 5150 is worse than what you're actually suffering from.
Well, I'm not going to discount what law enforcement brings to the table, because law enforcement does deliver a security to the parents who are at wit's end, and we're saying we're here to help. However, what I say, and there's some truth to this silliness, if your house is on fire, don't call a plumber. And if someone is having a psychotic episode, we need to send a mental health provider to that location. And while this initiative, Measure AG, provides strictly funds for brick and mortar, and that's what it is. It's to build a facility or more than one facility, to develop facilities in Mendocino County. I want you to realize that in 2017 or 2016, the budget for mental health to provide a whole abundance of services is $27 million. And so the very first,
And it's not working.
well, I think we can do much better. The very first group of naysayers will say, but how are we going to staff this mental health service center? And I'm saying the vast majority of services we're already paying for, but we're paying out of county. And we're trying to deliver these services locally, where people can maybe see their family, they can wear their own clothes, they can get to know their therapist instead of transporting them 150 miles one
Cared
day.
for by people in this community,
And
jobs for people here.
jobs, well-paying jobs, well-paying jobs for people who go to local training and so forth. And, you know, in Mendocino County, we talk about local food and local transport and local everything. And what we're saying is provide local services to make it stay here.
So, go ahead.
Can I'd like to just
Yeah.
add something, that up until July 1st of this year, when the provider changed, mental health provider changed, up until that time, if your family member was psychotic or suicidal, because they made you wait until they were dangerous, you could not go and get help on day one of a crisis. You call mental health, county mental health, or you call Ortner, and you say, my daughter is suicidal and psychotic, call law enforcement. That's what the crisis line worker would tell people. Now, I think since July 1st, that's changed.
For the better, absolutely
For
for
the
the
better.
better.
So there has
With
been an
Redwood
improvement.
Community Services,
last 2 months.
and we have access to Redwood Community Services, where we did not have access to make any change prior to that with Ortner or with county mental health,
Does
basically.
Redwood Community Services operate only in Mendocino County? Are
Yes.
they a local?
Yes, they are a
Yes.
local
Mom and pop.
organization.
They
They-
really
they-
are.
They're not like a
Children's-
corporate like
They're,
Ortner
they are
was.
not an Ortner, not at
Okay.
all.
No, and they were Redwood Children's Services up until maybe a year ago, and they changed the name. So now they have taken over adult services as of July 1st. And this is a huge difference, and it's really important because they have an open door policy. We have access to them. We can say, this isn't working. And I've done that because I take calls from family members, and I can call their clinical manager and say, this is what's going on, this person needs help, here's, and have that person call the clinical
So
manager.
the disaster that was happening a few months ago has lessened a little bit, at least in this initial.
I think the bleeding has stopped, and we're certainly getting a responsive answer from Redwood Quality. But let me tell you, this is exciting for me, but my wife says I need to get out more. Since November of last
I
year,
saw you and Elf the other day.
since November of last year, when we started our discussion, it started with a Facebook comment I made, and it just blew up. But since that, our group has assembled. I'm telling you that every day I've been at work, I have participated in major mental health discussions, and that had never happened.
Wow.
Major mental health discussions only happened 4 weeks before the budget was signed. Mendocino County is talking about mental health every day now, and it's
So-
just like any other societal problem. The more we talk about it, really and truly, the closer we are to a solution. And is there a solution to mental health? Well, we're not going to cure mental health, but we're going to improve the response, improve the services to family members, and hopefully reduce our suicide rate, which at some statistics, we're number 10 per capita in the state of California of the suicide rate. So when are we going to say that the services that mental health should be providing are wraparound services equal to a fire department or a law enforcement response? And that's what we're looking for. And fortunately, there's people like Sonia and some other parents. I probably know 100 parents like Sonia who say to me, Sheriff, my son, my daughter has been in your jail and they're mentally ill. What can we do? And I say, well, I understand that the jail is not the proper place for someone who's mentally ill. But in Mendocino County, we lack the facilities. And so that's why this initiative is going forward.
This half-cent sales tax is to build this facility.
Well, several,
Not to
yes.
staff it, but to build it.
And remember, this is for Fort Bragg, we're not the county of Ukiah, we're the county of Mendocino. And we are certainly looking forward to instituting an improvement on the coast for mental health services. Am I promising that we're going to build a psychiatric health facility on the coast and inland? No, not at all. But we certainly, this 11-person commission, which you alluded to earlier, is aware that this is not the county of Ukiah. We are trying to provide a solution to a county-wide problem.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping happens, and what I think will happen, is we'll have something called crisis residential treatment
Oh,
centers.
this is wonderful.
And, these provide, someone can be on day one of a crisis, and that person can go in voluntarily to the crisis residential treatment center. They're not locked. They're staffed with multiple kinds of people. So there will have to be medical access, mental health professionals, family members who live this.
These are voluntary.
Yes, voluntary, and so it's not for people in advanced stages of crisis. In advanced stages, and the very advanced stages, if there's violence potential, then but it'll be so few, not like now, where anybody in crisis up until, July 1st was told to call law enforcement. So we could have a crisis residential treatment center. It's a much cheaper way to do it. We'll still need the psychiatric health facility, but the law enforcement officer can drop a person off, or a family member can drop a person off at the crisis residential center. They can stay for up to 30 days. I mean, a doctor can even say this person needs to stay longer.
So where does that fit? Does that come out of this money, or is this a
This is
different
the
program you're talking
$27
about?
million that we get from the state and federal money. We get annually $27 million for staffing.
For the
This
staffing.
is from
That's
the
right.
current monies that are available. Now,
That's right.
are you envisioning this as being in a separate facility or part of the facility you're talking about?
Marianne, that's a great question, but we're not at a stage where we're saying, here's a model of what we're doing on paper, because we want this 11-person commission to go to the board and say, this is what our solution is. And I don't want this to be a Tom Allman solution. I want this to be a solution and where we hear all the stakeholders saying, does a 72-hour facility need to be next door to the 30-day crisis? Probably not, but if there is a reason that we need to have it, let's have it. Or should it be 20 miles apart? But what we're looking at is really and truly a solution that I'm not aware of any other county in the state having this type of solution, because mental health has been pieceworked and saying, well, we have a problem, let's deal with this problem. We're saying, let's look at our problem as a whole. And one of the things we didn't talk about at the very beginning, Skip, is the lack of services that some of our veterans on the coast are feeling.
Yeah. When
And-
you talk about suicide, there's a
There you go.
way out of line there.
And as a person whose brother committed suicide, who was a veteran, I certainly am aware of that. So we're saying, let's improve the VA services, working with the VA. Let's improve the mental health services on the coast. And we don't know where we're going to go on this, but I'm really excited that we're having these conversations.
Well, this potential of partnering with other people gives it a lot more power. I mean, tax revenue raises so much for a certain limited amount of time, but these programs have to continue long after Tom Allman's here, long after I'm here. So it's like, partnering with other institutions, colleges, the Veterans Administration seems to be a very wise way to go, because my question about the money, and I'm going to get right to it.
Let's go. Let's go.
You're stepping a lot of steps here to jump to the money.
The money is what people, if anybody's going to resist this initiative, it's going to be about money.
Right?
And I think most people support it, but they wonder, wow, we're going to give another half a cent for 5 years to government.
Right?
Government is the source of the problem.
Right?
Sell us this. Tom Allman's gone in 4 years. Who's going to spearhead the ethics of this? Who's going to guarantee that they didn't borrow against this projected $20 million right at the outset to build a facility, but the rates that they borrowed under and the returns that they expected and the revenues you know what I'm saying? This could be another pension fund debacle.
And I'm glad you bring up the pension
And
fund.
when you sit in this seat, 1 month ago, the person in that seat was the City of Fort Bragg Development Director, and she said point blank, sales tax revenues have been going down and will continue to go down because of online sales. So when I hear the projections of $20 to $37 million in sales tax revenue, I'm leery.
As you should be. So let's talk about that. The
Do we
county.
borrow against
First
this
of all,
ahead of time?
before you get there, would you
Okay.
also explain about the commission and who's going to make the final decisions? Because I think that plays into the whole
Yeah.
money question that he's asked.
So let's talk about the commission first. So one of the initial conversations that our group had when we started meeting in January was how do we get over the fact that there's a lot of citizens who have a very serious mistrust in government and sometimes specifically the Board of Supervisors. You know, I don't know if you know this, but the county budget, if you look at social services, law enforcement, everything, is $250 million, $250 million. Now, the vast majority of that is social services and the supervisors, their ability to have the discretionary funding is around 75, 80 million. So with this belief that the Board of Supervisors shouldn't be openly entrusted with this, and I'm going to use a figure $37 million, the 11-person commission was discussed. And of the 11-person commission is 5 citizens that each Board of Supervisors, member of the board, will choose one person. The sheriff or his or her representative, the county auditor, the CEO, the mental health director, his or her representative, a representative from NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and from the behavioral health, the citizen, what used to be known as the mental health board.
Right.
And so this 11-person commission will make the recommendations to the board, but to answer your question, who has final authority, what we learned this year with Proposition 172 is because the Board of Supervisors is a legislative body representing Mendocino County, they have the ultimate authority to say this is how it will be spent. Now, I venture to guess that any member of the Board of Supervisors who would go against what this 11-person commission, if they vote against it, I think there would be some serious, for lack of better words, hell to pay, because this 11-person commission, their only horse in the race is to build a better mental health, model. And the Board of Supervisors has clearly said, and they said this in an open meeting 2 weeks ago, we are not mental health experts. Dan Hamburg said that several times.
Yes.
We are not mental health experts. Well, okay. Well, let's entrust it to some mental health experts
Yes.
to come in and say, this is what you need to do.
And what are they expert in?
Well, let's find out.
Yeah,
But,
that's
you know,
pretty
But,
amazing.
do we have to wait
comment.
5 years for this money to be collected to see the facility built?
according to the auditor, our elected auditor, Lloyd Weir, if we have a past sales tax, that's collateral. We absolutely
That's
have
what I'm
collateral
getting to. Okay.
that says, all right, we know that we're guaranteed this income for the next 5 years. And is there going to be money borrowed against it? I'm not going to get into that. I've been told there is at a very low rate, around 1%, to front the money to get it done.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get at.
And if we can have that money fronted, there is. However, let's talk about the very first thing that needs to happen once this passes. And that's a needs assessment. We really need to have a professional needs assessment to say, what does Mendocino County need? How many people a night do we need to house in our psychiatric health facility?
10 years from now, and 20 years from
well,
now.
That's right. If
Just
you look at our
even
population
collaborative.
growth, where we're going to go. So the needs assessment is a very important part of this. I know that at the sheriff's office, we do a needs assessment every time there's a new building that's, that we talk about, whether it's a new jail building or what, a needs assessment. What do we really need to do? Because we don't want to build a building that 5 years from now we say is too small, but then again, we don't want to build a building where we have twice as much office space.
Can we see what got a question?
Speaking, is it flashing?
It's not flashing
Well,
anymore.
I guess they're not there. Speaking of buildings, one of the things people have been saying is that you're going to take over the old Howard
Sure.
Hospital.
Well,
Is that-
not me, but there's certainly a discussion regarding what people are calling the Howard Legacy building, or old Howard Hospital.
The Howard White Elephant?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a hospital and it has rooms. However,
There's a lot
it's certainly
that
not
needs
up to
be
me.
done.
Well, sure it is.
Yeah,
Sure it is. But I think that it wouldn't. What if I said yes or no to that? Either answer is going to be from a person who's not an expert on where it should be and what's going to be needed. Some people,
Let's see a
So
question.
it needs to go through the process.
of course,
Let's
of
hear a
course, it
question.
does.
Hey, you're on the air. Hello?
Okay.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I was wondering about the Stepping Up initiative, how the county has participated in that initiative thus far, and what the county is planning on doing in reference to that Stepping Up initiative, if anything, in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what
So
she's
making sure
referring
everybody heard the question, the Stepping Up Initiative, and I don't.
What is that?
Well, I'm not an expert on the Stepping Up Initiative. It's a government-funded program that came in from last budget cycle, so not the one 2 months ago, but 14 months ago, where there was some money given to social services to work with the sheriff's office on a Stepping Up Initiative of improving some basic services of Stepping Up. But let me tell you some of the things that we're doing. I don't know if we can clearly say this is from Stepping Up, and I appreciate the question because that's a question that needs to be asked. It's a great example of other monies that are out there that if this initiative passes, we'll be able to use for our matching fund with these other government-sponsored initiatives out there. But what we've started is a MOPS program, MOPS. I wish there was another acronym. Mobile Outreach Patient Services. And so every week the sheriff's office has an unarmed employee, not a peace officer, an unarmed employee who was raised on the coast here, working with a mental health employee. And 2 days a week they go to the Round Valley, Covelo, and 2 days a week they go to South Coast, Point Arena and Wallala, two greatly underserved areas. And what they're doing is they're checking in with these, if I could say, frequent flyers that we've had with law enforcement. Have people about once a month, they decompensate, and their family members or their neighbors, or they call us and say they need help. So what the MOPS employees are doing is they're knocking on the doors and they're checking in and saying, have you eaten? Is your medication okay? Are you wearing clean clothes? Is your house cold? Is it hot? Have you checked in with your family? Now let me tell you the exciting part of this. Since this has started, and as of today I can say this, 100% of these frequent flyers that MOPS is checking on, they're not coming up on law enforcement's radar because
fantastic.
We're helping them get their life together, and we're not having to spend the cost of a deputy sheriff or two deputy sheriffs or three going to their house. And I'm going to tell you the cost of doing this with a car and these two employees who are not expensive as a deputy sheriff with workers' comp and everything else. These two employees are basically the same cost as a deputy sheriff, and we're providing better services.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
That's
I
it. That's the
think
key.
one
Here's
of-
a question right here that's just like this. It says, I support the measure in desperation, but can you relate how you will attract professional staff in the mental health field when we cannot fill positions in Mendocino County now? What will be different? And you got a question too?
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I think is the county has had trouble, getting staff because it's not really a good place to work in mental health, frankly. I mean, when you go to work in a field helping people, you want to have a team that works together to help people. And they've also paid very, very little, not fair salaries. Redwood, so people will now work for Redwood. Redwood. I'm just going to call them Redwood. There's Redwood Quality Management,
Redwood's
which is
good.
and Redwood is the services
It's
part.
not ordinary. It's Redwood.
Yes, Redwood. So the people, it's a good place to work.
Yeah.
They've hired excellent staff for children's, and they're hiring excellent staff now for adults. So it's a good place to work. There's a lot of teamwork.
So part of the problem was the work environment, not
think
just
so.
the pay scale.
Well, no, the pay
Well,
scale
both.
has been a
Both.
big
And-
issue.
And I think we have to pay a lot of attention to making sure that these are living wage jobs, really good paying jobs.
Exactly.
I mean, 27 million is enough to pay people fairly for this kind of work.
Yeah, you
This
saw
might
an
be a
approach
good-
at half the cost and twice the good.
This may be the time that you can talk about
Well, I want
other
to answer.
opportunities.
I want to get in on this answer to this question, and while I certainly appreciate the question, when someone says they're supporting this out of desperation, we as society have to ask ourselves, really? Is that where the services are right now? The history of services? And unfortunately, with the exception of Redwood stepping up to the plate, 60 days ago, that's where we are in Mendocino County. People are supporting this, saying, can we just get something? But let me talk about this. And I will say this clearly. There are very few people in Mendocino County that know more than me about how hard it is to recruit professionals for a lower than standard wage. I hire deputy sheriffs, and when we hire deputy sheriffs, we recruit, and out of every 100 recruiting applicants, we hire 2. So I am looking forward to this challenge. I love challenges. Was I frustrated over the reason that the psychiatric health facility closed in 2000 because they couldn't attract? Of course I was frustrated. I was a lieutenant up in the north part of the county and said, what are they doing? But I am ready right now to commit to working with the county and with Redwood to say, what can I do? What can Tom Allman do to tour the state and recruit some people? Let's be very honest about this. Yeah. We have the most beautiful county in California. We have 92 miles of coastline.
I love it.
We have 3,509 square miles with only a population of 87,000. Why can't we recruit people to work here for a livable wage?
With a budget like what you've been describing.
Putting the money back into our economy.
And I want to add on to that I think we can have a magnet program, mental health services program, where people will want to come. We can start doing some neurofeedback things. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is outstanding, and they've been doing this in Europe for years. Here, the American Psychiatric Association and Big Pharma doesn't want it because there are, that's still important, but still there are many people that can be helped, and certainly their lives can be enhanced, by neurofeedback things. And so this book is outstanding.
More partnerships with the hospital.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if we start bringing that in, it's going to be a magnet, and people will want to come here, I think, to do internships and residencies.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
So if we have, it's this combination of complementary treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about another partnership, and it's, I think, goes on to your question regarding training and so forth. I've been approached by, and I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty right now to publicly talk about it, by a public organization which has very good land, and they are extremely interested in starting a training program for mental health services. So in this initiative, and I hope people can go to our website, revivementalhealthservices.com, and read what the initiative is.
There's actually a link to it on the Mendocino TV.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so the language itself clearly says 10% of all funds collected will be used to build and develop a training center for mental health professionals / first responders. And let's talk about this. This is not classroom training. This is for my deputies to go learn the proper techniques of less than lethal. In other words, how to contain this mental health situation without using a gun, without using lethal devices. Who knows what it's going to be. But there is no place in California where we can have our deputies sent where they can provide this. And
No place in the whole state?
If there is, I'm not aware of it because it's not advertised.
Well,
Well, this is great. So
I'm not
this
aware
idea
of
of being
either.
a magnet is not just pie in the sky. It's like we would really create something
We
that
could
would
have a model
be
skip.
very
That's right.
invaluable to not just Mendocino County.
That's right.
Okay, I'm liking this.
I got to tell you, I'm excited about having nurses and teachers and parents and firefighters and law enforcement and ambulance personnel saying, I went to the week-long mental health training in Ukiah or wherever it's going to be, and we're going to become a model. And that's exciting for me because, I had a person come to me 3 weeks ago and said, well, Tom, when you have someone who's mentally ill, why don't you run at him with a blanket and wrap him up? Well, listen, I'm not going to poo-poo that idea. That could be an idea. That could work.
Yeah, sometimes.
But has anybody ever trained on it? Or do deputy sheriffs carry a blanket? No, we don't. And once again, law enforcement is the first responder to all mental health situations. And let me clarify something I didn't at the beginning of this. When I said law enforcement should not be the first responders to psychotic episodes, that's unless there's some type of violence involved. If there's a gun, a knife, there's a situation,
It's out of control.
our deputy sheriffs want to go there and contain the situation. But if it's a non-violent mental health psychotic episode, we are not the correct response unit.
Yeah, because in the beginning of a crisis, it's very easy to get a person knows that they're tormented by the voices or
They just need somebody to
that they're
talk
just
to, yeah.
wanting to hurt themselves. And, you can get them, a family member, a friend can get them in the car. Some of the people can even walk in to the crisis residential treatment center. We'll need one on the coast and one inland.
I was going to say, those are the kind of things that could be in every community,
That's
really.
right.
Well, wait, some of those are right now. What, and I hope people know what the Manzanita project is, and if you don't know what the Manzanita project is, I want people to look at it. Manzanita project is working right now. Now in Ukiah, it's 24/7. In Willits and Fort Bragg, it's 40 hours a week. But it currently is a drop-in clinic, not for people to stay there overnight, but for people who just want to either socialize or not socialize at a safe location. They can sit in a chair and look out the window all day. They can make lunch. The Manzanita project is a project that government should learn from. They spend $1 to accomplish what government's spending $10 to do.
So and it's different from a crisis residential treatment
Yes,
center.
it
This
is.
is a patient-run program for patients.
I was gonna say, who
and there's
operates that,
there's a
yeah.
place for that.
Nice.
But the crisis residential there will be a medical component that's really critical, and hopefully there will be a neurofeedback component, and that there will be alternative, practitioners, there will be family members, there will be recovered patients, and mental health professionals all working together.
So one of the challenges I think you have is that people see that, hear that, and expect that the problem they see on the street every day that has got not only this county, every city, the country up
Right.
in arms, this is not going to resolve that issue, is it?
Well, I think that there's a certain percentage
short
of
Yeah.
people who are homeless who could benefit from proper treatment of mental health locally. I think that we would see that. But as far as people who are houseless, and that's what it was referred to me in Mendocino last week, they've made a choice to not have a house. Yeah, there's some people who will continue to do that. But there's also people who are wandering our streets, talking to each other, who are doing inappropriate things, saying inappropriate things, acting out, that we need to get better services to.
Although if somebody doesn't want services unless
Okay.
they're committed.
Unless they're acting out, I get it.
Right, and-
It's their right to.
But
Yeah.
with programs like these, some people aren't going to become homeless. Some people aren't going to become psychotic
true.
because they will have access to the treatment of that they choose. Meds are just one form of treatment. There are other forms of treatment. And so I think we're going to have fewer people on the streets acting out.
So it's
I mean,
a
this
solid
is-
support system
That's
with
right.
alternatives.
That's
Like
right.
you said, this
just
isn't a
the
cure for
drugs.
mental illness.
There is no. I'm going to guess the Romans
this is a
had
program.
mental illness that they said, what are we going to do? So we're not even pretending that we can cure mental illness. We can't. It's nobody in this room, as far as I know, has that answer. However, delivering the services, and this is very, very important, to improve the quality of life for not just the patient, but for their family,
Right.
that's very important.
It is important. And another component that's really critical to this is intensive day treatment program, where people can learn skills to manage their own symptoms. So
This
there's
includes
a
like drug addiction, alcohol addiction services?
yes, we
It
want
seems to me
that
that's
to
a
be
basic
part of it
compounding problem
too.
here.
Yeah, but people can learn to manage their symptoms, and relapses can be stopped. Patients and family members can learn how, okay, when you go a night without sleep, we need to address that, and you figured out with the doctor ahead of time how to address that. So there'll be fewer people needing to be hospitalized, fewer people, being evicted
Violence.
So
or screaming.
I want to talk about the jail, if I can change the
That was
subject
a question
just a
I
little
had.
bit.
Yes. Can you talk about how mental health is handled in the jail now and
Well-
how this will make a difference?
It will make a difference, but yes, thank you. So, your question, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing it up. The statewide average is 20% of all county jail inmates are patients of one type of mental illness or another. It could be as simple as just needing therapy, or it could be as strong as psychotropic medication needed to, calm them down. Now think of that. In sleepy little Mendocino County, we're a easygoing county. Everybody's fine. But I don't know if you know how many inmates we have in our county jail on Low Gap Road in Ukiah each day. But we average right around 305,
Really?
which is a pretty high number.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I don't wear that as a badge
I
of
always thought
honor.
it was a little jail.
I wish we had 20, but some people are violent. They need to be there. But for the most part, they're sentenced inmates who judges have said, it's your third offense drunk driving and you're going to spend a year in county jail. Or it's your second offense domestic violence, you're going to spend a year in county jail.
Aren't you also getting people from the state, with the state sending people
Well,
back to the county?
the state didn't bring up a green bus and bring them to us, but what's happening is when people violate their parole, not all of them are going back to the state. The vast majority under Prop 47 and AB 109 are coming and staying in county jail. We actually have people in our county jail who have been sentenced to 10 years in county jail, whereas before AB 109, the paradigm was if you were sentenced to more than a year, so a year and a day, you went to state prison. Well, that doesn't happen anymore because the state prisons in the state, it's a whole new conversation, but are
Right.
greatly overcrowded. So if you consider that 20% fact, that means this morning when the sun came up, we had around 65 people in Mendocino County Jail who are mentally ill one way or the other. Well, some of them need to be there. Some of them are violent people, but they don't all need to be there because some people who are in jail who are mentally ill, the crime they committed was because of their mental illness. Whether they broke a window and the family said, we've had it, there's nothing else we can do with him, we're going to have him arrested for vandalism because he broke a vase or he pushed mom or who knows what. And they're at wit's end and they say, we're going to send him to county jail. Well, wait a minute. It's a jail. It's not a mental health facility. And for families to do this, just like your caller who said she was going to vote for this out of frustration, or he said vote for this out of frustration, people send their loved ones to jail out of frustration because there's nothing else they can do. And do I understand it? Of course I understand it. I had a mentally ill brother. I understand it. However, if we're talking quality of life, let's go on the first assumption that a correctional facility is not a location for someone who's mentally ill.
Right.
And we have to get that percentage of people, as Sonia was saying earlier, prevention is so important. What if these people who were in jail for breaking a window, what if their parents said, since we have a local place where we can go in and a drop-in clinic, let's start that now. Let's see what we can do to improve the services that we're delivering and that we're getting. The safety net isn't there, in my opinion, and we need to improve the safety net.
Yeah, it's
We
like a
have
hard
not
fall
had it.
onto cement.
And that,
There is, okay, we're out of a plane. Yeah, there is no safety net. When I say that, I'm not being detrimental or disrespectful, a better word, of the current employees, and the county still has some mental health employees. These men and women are doing the best they can with what they have. They really and truly
very
are.
difficult circumstances.
It's a very
Yes.
difficult situation. So I'm not sitting here and saying they're not doing anything about it. That's not it at all. I'm saying we need to improve their resource ability, put more tools in the toolbox for them to say, all right, well, we're working with this MOPS, program, and we are now taking care of these people instead of law enforcement and firemen. So,
getting back to some of the nuts and bolts
Okay.
of the whole measure. So is this a 50+1 or is this a 2/3 majority?
it's a
that you need?
2/3. It's a
It is a
66%.
2/3. Wow.
Yes.
So you've got your work to cut out. You want to talk a little bit about the companion measure? Oftentimes people don't quite get that they need
get
to
it.
vote for both.
I get it. So Measure AG is the product of our 4,583 signatures that we collected around the county. That we only needed 2,502, and so we almost doubled that when we turned them in. So Measure AG is the half-cent sales tax for 5 years, 60 months, that the money will be put into a special fund that it can be used for brick and mortar. That's simple. Well, after we had it approved by Sue Ranishek, the county recorder, and she said, yes, it's qualified. The state Board of Equalization contacted our county council, our attorneys, and said, listen, usually citizens don't put tax initiatives on the ballot with petitions. The citizens put on property bond, the property tax initiatives, but not the sales tax.
So this is very unusual.
It is. It's very unusual. But once again, let's go to the
Mendocino.
desperation, the desperation question that you got. And so the Board of Equalization said, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not going to agree or disagree with this, but I'm certainly questioning it. They said the Board of Supervisors has to put on the ballot another measure, which is going to give the Board of Equalization the legal ability to enact Measure AG. So
Because they collect it.
They're the ones who collect it. So what I'm saying is, please, if you are going to, and all of our literature is going to say this, measure AG and measure AH, and in the alphabet they come right after the other. Okay, those both have to pass by 66%.
Well, both of them have to be 66.
Well, right before we came on the air, I called our county council, and she said, I'm quite sure it's 66%, but she was going to get back to me. So, like I said, I'm not an
Better
attorney.
safe than sorry.
But our language is going to be very clear that we hope people understand that Measure AH there's no extra money involved in AH. It's merely an enacting clause. So our billboards and our yard signs and our literature is going to have both on it. They're going to be out, as soon as we can put them up. And here's what I'd like. I'd like for people who have questions about this to go to our Facebook page, Revive Mental Health Services Facebook page, and ask these questions, because we want the answers. We want to give them the answers. We want to say, we've thought about this, or we haven't thought about this. Let's get you the answers.
So when it comes down to taxes, these days, as you know, people are really upset. There are people that say a sales tax is regressive and does an unfair a burden on people who are low
Poor
income.
and rich, yes.
Right, and you're not the only tax measure that's going to be on the ballot.
Right.
So how are you going to deal with those issues?
Well, I mean, I would like for people to prioritize, and if they're going to vote no, they're going to vote no. But if they're going to understand where our mental health services are, I'd love for that. But let me tell you this, one of the thought processes that our committee talked about. As far as a partial tax on property, in the summertime, our deputy sheriffs deal with a lot of tourists, visitors, and guests of our county who are mentally ill.
Really?
They really do, and
Wow.
and it's not a burden, but it's certainly a noticeable situation. And taxes on property, on parcel taxes, aren't paid by visitors and tourists and guests of our county, but sales tax is. This is a temporary tax. It's not there. There's a clear sunset after 60 months. It stops, and the only way to expand it would be going back to the people. And let me tell you, I am in no way ready to ask anybody else for this. This is brick and mortar. Yeah, Skip, you said something earlier, what's going to happen when I'm gone and so forth. What I told the Board of Supervisors 3 weeks ago is, I can guarantee you in 50 years, I won't be alive. I'm a type A personality. Who knows? I won't be here. I'm 55 now. I will not be 105 years old. But I fully expect Mendocino County to have a mental health facility that we build, and it will last 50 years. We have to get that facility to where local services.
Skip, I heard a call.
Yeah,
Is
but nothing
there-
came through.
There's
No, there's
nothing
nothing.
come through,
Well,
yes.
There's one other little comment here. Let me see what
Feel
it says.
free to call 964-0101.
Will Sonia Nesh be on the commission to make the determination? She has
Nobody,
been the voice of reason. I hope she'll be involved.
Well, let me just say this. When we were discussing this as a group, it was clearly my suggestion that Sonia Nesh will be on this commission. That's why we said a representative of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. My mother is a mommy in a different county because of my brother's situation. Sonia has written books. She's a local expert on it. And what she brought to the table during our discussions of this, it was absolutely beneficial for everyone. And I'll say this, without Sonia being a stakeholder at our table, we would not be talking about this 30-day crisis residential, because that was her point. I remember, Sonia, when you said, Tom, this has to be on the
Yes.
part. And I said, you're right. And I went home, I started reading, and I said, she's right. So whoever wrote that question certainly is aware of who the activists are in our county, because Sonia, I'll put her on her pedestal and say, she doesn't just believe in it, she walks the walk with this in her county or in her family, of her having daily interactions with a family member who's mentally ill. She knows what services we don't provide, and I believe she knows what services we should provide. So
Well,
I
and
appreciate your help on this.
She's
Thank
been
you.
decades of watching the services come up and down and around.
Well, that's how she and I met.
Right,
Of her
personal
coming to my office
experiences.
as I was first sheriff to say, what are we going to do about this? And that was 10 years ago.
Oh, and that was
Persistence
10
pays
years ago.
off.
Wow.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I think I've known her about
thank you.
17 or 18 years.
Okay.
And
Yes.
it's been a continuing frustration for her as well.
Hey,
So,
folks, we got a few more minutes if we want to wrap up anything that we haven't.
anything you guys want to add about trust? I think that the whole thing, one of the big issues is going to come down to people
I
trusting.
get it. I understand it.
Yeah, that's it for all issues having to do with any money. I mean,
Well, for all issues,
I
actually.
mean, pretty much. I
that's-
mean, talk to everybody about. We do different forums on different topics and stuff, and underneath everything is this lack of confidence that the money's going to be spent
I get it.
wisely.
That's why I would like people to read the language in the initiative. I mean, the language says it can only be used for brick and mortar, and it says it cannot be used for personnel. Because I don't want the county to spend the money for 5 years on personnel, and then on month 61 they say we don't have the money anymore, so people are laid off.
No, I agree with you.
We're going to say we're going to have a building, now let's get it staffed.
Right, and we're going to be paying close attention, to how we want excellent model programs here.
I
And
think
there's
this
a
is
lot
so
of
key
us
to it
that
because
are.
a model program, it serves our interest, plus it generates even more income for the county if people are coming here to take classes.
There's an economic driver here, sure.
Well, let's see what the questions are. Okay, get this right, Skip. Speakerphone. Hello, you're on the air.
Now you have to hit the button of the
No,
line.
I did it backwards. Hello, you're on the air. Hello,
Hello.
what's your question?
Oh, I'm actually watching you. And anyway, this is my question. What kind of services do we have on the coast? They talked about Manzanita House inland. What do we have on the coast?
All right, thank you.
Well, we have very little. As of July 1st, when someone is in crisis, they can go to the Redwood Community Services building, which is just just on Highway 20 in I think the second block. It's just before you turn, just past Trailer Cove.
Yeah.
Okay, they're there, and supposedly, the word is you can take someone in crisis there and get help from them.
24/7.
No,
Just
they're only, they're
9 to 5.
Yeah, something like that.
It was 24/7 inland.
For Ukiah,
And
Buffalo Willows.
yeah, so
Okay.
we're working very hard to push to get crisis residential treatment and intensive day treatment on the coast like now. So I'm going to keep pushing that because we need it. We need it right now. I want to mention too before this ends that in September Dan Jurdy is calling a meeting at the library, I believe, which would be great if you covered it, on mental health services. I'm sure it'll get publicized. He'll see that it's publicized, but it'd be wonderful if you could cover it too.
Right. In Fort Bragg.
Yes, in Fort Bragg, and that would be a wonderful place for anybody who's interested to come
Oh, yeah.
and talk about the services that that they want, that we need, and how soon are we going to get these, and join us, in pushing to get the services now.
The gaps. The other thing that is available that we haven't talked about at all are the community health centers.
Sure.
There are, I believe, there's 7 still throughout
That's
the
what
county.
I think. Yeah,
And behavioral health is
Right.
one of the services
Right.
they must provide.
I have long been a proponent of the clinics, which are in each, in 7 communities, of them doing medical outpatient for mental health. I mean, that makes so much more sense to me. And then, the county and Redwood would be responsible for crisis because the clinics can't handle crisis. They can handle medical outpatient, and they should be doing that.
Well,
And
they are doing some of that.
well, they are
Yes.
they are
At
doing
least
some
in
of
Fort
that.
Bragg.
They are, and but there was some resistance in some of the clinics. The clinics are each of them has their own flavor, which is a problem.
They're
It
each
involves
they're
partnering
each
with the
their
county though for the money.
they're each their own independent nonprofit with their own board
That's
of
right, but
directors and
I
their own-
still
yeah.
wish there was a way to get them to do all medical outpatient, and for them to get, they already, maybe they don't. I don't know if they need more money, but work with them to let them do medical outpatient, let Redwood do crisis, intensive day treatment, psychiatric hospital, and so on.
So to your caller, I just want to say 2 words. What services are in Fort Bragg, and it's not enough, and we absolutely
Exactly.
have to improve that. I want to take law enforcement out of the always 100% first responder to mental illness because it's not helping.
what these
So
people
we
have to
we have one more caller. I think we have time for one more.
Hello, you're on the air. What you got to say?
Yes, good evening. My name's Camille Schrader, and I work with Redwood Quality Management Company, or Redwood, as Sonia has been referring to it. And I just wanted to say that I think that this initiative is going to go a very long way towards giving us some of the facilities and resources that we need to respond to the needs of our vulnerable population, especially crisis residential and psychiatric health facilities, where we can immediately respond, assess, and give them the exact kind of service that they need when they need it. The local option is going to be a tremendous support to the work that us and all of our community providers are trying to do to support and intervene in the suffering of our mentally ill adult population.
Camille, can you tell us any more than what we were able to put together about what services are available now, especially since
Yes,
you've assumed
I
the
thank
contract?
you. You reminded me. Yes, so we do have 24/7 on-call crisis support on the coast. They are physically there, as Sonia described, from I think it's 9 to 6. But then, due to volume, it's a per diem call. So you're going to call, and somebody will meet either law enforcement or the person either in their home or at the hospital on the coast. And I think our average time is somewhere around 20 or 22 minutes on the coast. We have people on call all night and all weekend to respond specifically on the coast. And then inland, it's a 24/7 center where we also meet you or meet law enforcement or meet the family, depending upon what the situation is and the volume.
All right,
We
thank
took
you.
over for adult crisis on July 1st. It has been triple the volume that we thought that crisis support would need.
Well,
So what other support services other than crisis are you providing at this point
So
in time?
right now you can. It is not. You can receive. You walk into any of the No Wrong Door providers, and I think Sonia probably has some materials for you. From Manzanita, McCabe, and Hospitality Center, RCS are the primary adult providers, and you can call RQMC, and your referral will go to one of those providers, who will, through an assessment and working with you for a client plan, can be provided all of the menu of services that are available to children if it's medically appropriate and if you qualify as severely mentally ill, which is a conversation. And so severely mentally ill are within the purview of the mental health plan, which is what the county provides, and those that are not severely mentally ill should be and do access mental health services through their primary care provider or the local clinics. When you do qualify, you can receive, so there's case management, there's family therapy, there's individual therapy, there's individual rehab, there's group rehab, there's something called collateral, so a support system. So if you have somebody in your support system that also needs some help because they're helping you, there's medication management, there's crisis intervention. I think I've covered, for children, there's therapeutic behavioral services, but not for adults. It doesn't.
So,
thanks for calling in, Carmen.
Wait,
So a wide range.
Here, Sonia has a question.
just a quick question. Can you tell us any more about the September meeting with Dan Judy? And I believe you're going to be there.
Yes, and I think you are going to welcome people, aren't you?
Yes. Is it
So we are doing actually, it's the mental health, I don't remember if it's the County of Mendocino or the Mental Health Board and NAMI have requested and are sponsoring a coastal continuum of care mental health services meeting. And basically it's a review of what has happened since July 1st, where we are, what our immediate services and supports are, and then what we call the short-term and long-term goals.
And when and where is this meeting?
The library
When?
in Fort Bragg. Oh, Sonia, is it 6 o'clock?
You had told me September 22nd, but
Yes,
I'm not.
it is
that
September
right?
22nd.
Okay, September 22nd, and I don't know the time.
I believe it's 6 o'clock, but we can
Okay.
definitely get that information
Absolutely,
out to you.
yes.
So I have one more question, Camille. Are you able to serve the Spanish-speaking community now?
Yes. Undocumented. Oh, goodness, you guys are wonderful. I actually had recently undocumented in California received a limited level of service available to them. But I have to tell you that of all of the people who've come through crisis, and they've been, I have to say, we did 150 assessments in 15 days.
Wow.
98% of those clients have private insurance. most of them full-scope Medi-Cal. And if they don't have it when we get them enrolled and they qualify retroactively. So in terms of resources, one of the reasons why Sheriff Allman's amazing initiative could be successful is it used to be that none of these adults were covered through Medi-Cal, so it was an all-county dollar to cover the service, meaning our county's little amount of money that they get could not be matched for a federal dollar. Now that they're Medi-Cal, we have a range of opportunities and services and supports that can be provided to them and draw down federal resources, federal funding.
And so some of the problems with appropriately recording those visits to be able to get reimbursements is getting straightened out?
Well, it's so funny. It is straightened out. On the children's side, we've been doing it for a very long time.
We've been doing
The transition into an electronic health record was the challenge. On the adult side, it's developing the kind of capacity to be able to actually, they're providing the service. Sheriff Alman's absolutely right. They are amazingly committed to these, and the people know that. You know, the suffering human beings that you see in the system is just woefully inadequate. And so they're meeting them where they are, but they're not able to necessarily have not been able to actually document that service, put it into a billable claim, and get it sent for service, get it sent to the state and fed so that you can get the reimbursement. And yes, that is getting figured out. All of the adult providers, Redwood has done this, so that's why we will be providing. That's why we provide crisis, and we will also provide the day program that Sonia is speaking of.
Right.
So did you answer me affirmatively that you do have Spanish-speaking?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's always been a problem on the
And the
coast.
thing that I forgot to mention one other thing, Marianne, we have crisis, but if you don't qualify as a danger to self or others, which is or gravely disabled to meet the 5150 criteria for a hospital, and right now we don't have the voluntary crisis residential that will be wonderfully helpful. We do have 60 days of aftercare, which is new. So if you don't get hospitalized, then we provide all of that range of services which I described, if you need it and if you want it, for 60 days while we have a nurse at R2MC that's linking you to your primary care provider at the end of that time. And that service is available for anybody, including those who have private insurance.
All right.
Oh, that's great.
Camille, thanks for taking the time to call in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
You guys are doing great, and this is a wonderful initiative. I understand it's worrisome, but it will truly, truly help us. Thank you.
All right.
So I've got one final question.
One final question.
One final question is, you're looking for donations and volunteers.
Well, I can't discuss because this is a
you've got your-
non-political, but
Well, there's on our website, revivementalhealth.com, there's a place to volunteer to help
But
us.
what I'm asking about, when I looked there, it didn't really give me any idea of where my volunteer time might be spent or what my dollars would be going
So
for.
look again in a few days here.
Well,
I'm
and
going to
Facebook.
talk to Liz and we'll get that on there.
Okay.
Or on the Facebook.
ReviveMentalHealthServices.com, right?
Yeah, volunteer. Yes.
So I might take a guess that it's the usual political action kinds of things, of signs and pamphlets and
Letters to the editor
letters
and
to the
support.
editor
You know, and yeah.
and those kind of things. So yeah, it is pretty early because we haven't hit post Labor Day, and the campaign season doesn't really kick into gear until after Labor Day. So by that time, I'll bet you'll have it up on your website.
Yes.
And I will not be wearing a uniform, and I look forward to a very spirited campaign. I'm looking forward.
All right.
Great, thank you
Thank you.
both.
Both for being here.
Thanks for taking
welcome.
time. But
Thank you
as
so
much as I
much.
appreciate you two and Sonia Bina, there's people who took an hour out of their life to watch this.
Yeah.
And to those people, I really appreciate you understanding the need to improve where we are right now. And if there's a question you have, give us a Facebook, call me. My number's in actually the phone book. My personal number's in a phone book.
All right.
And I'd like to answer your question.
And also share with your friends. Tell your friends this show will be archived on at Mendocino TV.
You can watch us anytime.
Yeah.
MendocinoTV.com. You can make comments after the fact. People can reply to your comments. I'd like to say that we have another show coming up next Wednesday about the TOT bed tax increase in Fort Bragg. And then 2 weeks from tonight, City Council candidates for Fort Bragg.
Yes, and we're going to have Mendocino Coast Hospital candidates night.
Do we have a date?
Yes, but I can't remember it in this moment.
We'll keep you
I
posted.
was trying to look
There's a
at
lot
my
coming up. I'm going to
calendar.
wrap it up for Mendocino TV. This is Skip Tobby, your host, with Mary Ann McGee tonight for Naturally Mendocino. Good night, folks.